Are you a negative Nelly, an abominable no girl, or just a wise woman that knows why and when to say no? Join us on Hot Flash to find out which woman you are. Welcome to Hot Flash. I'm Kathy Hembry. I have been wife, mother, auntie, grandma, and mother-in-law to most of the people you see on Bible Discovery TV with programs that have been produced by us. But for today, I'm the host of Hot Flash, a show that we hope brings you some information about women's topics, some inspiration about women's topics, and just some insight that helps you continue to grow and become all that God wants you to be. I'm here with Kim Bracewell, who has worked for the ministry for many years in lots of capacities, and today we're going to be talking to her about she's a wife that's been married 15 years. And then we have Tony, who's my daughter-in-law, and she's just in her first decade, like 6 years of marriage. And then there's me. This topic today about knowing when to say no. As a Christian, you know what? I couldn't find one verse. And then I realized it's because women have a hard time saying no to their children, to others, to their husbands, to themselves. We have a hard time saying no, and we need to learn boundaries. And so God is so faithful. He gives us lots of scriptures that continually draw us back to the priorities in our life. And so I'd say the one scripture I'm going to pull out is Matthew 6:33 that says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you." So let's talk, girls. When you were thinking about, are you a negative Nelly or an abominable no woman, where did you go with that? Did you go as a parent or as a Christian or both?
I kind of went as both, and when I was looking for verses, to me, a lot of the verses that stood out were verses about the mindset, to have the mind like Christ, and to kind of, I guess, to build your priorities around that. It's a whole mindset.
It is. It's an attitude and a mind. You know, attitude, you kind of hear, fix your attitude. It's kind of a discipline. But mindset is, I get to choose to have a mindset. And if I have the mind of Christ, I'm going to be seeking His will first. And His will isn't that you don't get anything you want or that'll make you happy. It's that if you seek His will first, the things that you need and desire according to His will be accomplished in your life, and then you don't have to worry about it.
It's. I think the practice of it is a lot harder than the principle, because, I mean, how many people out there are saying yes to too many things, and you know, it's hard to say no to good things.
Well, and it's countercultural. I mean, we don't want to not say no to things. It's like we want to do things.
Why do we say yes so much, guys? Why is it so hard to say no?
Because we feel needed.
Okay, so let's think. Are we saying yes because God has asked you to do something and you've been moved? Are we saying yes because people will like you? Or are we saying yes because you have an exaggerated need of approval and you don't think you'll be okay either in God's sight or their sight unless you say yes to everything? You know, we talk about God, husband, family, and service. And I think in one segment we're going to deal with marriage, and then we're going to deal with just service as Christians. Which one do you want to go with first? Marriage or like?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So we know this, God, you know, husband, children, and then family and extended, you know, and others. But really, serving God and serving others, we feel so holy, and we really want to serve Him and please Him. And then serving others, we get pats on the back, and we feel like we accomplished something. And somebody says nice things to you. Oh, that was so nice of you that you did that. Boy, nobody else could have done it like you. But in a marriage, if our priority is God, husband, children, parents, and then others, you know, family and others, well, then we're out of order. And the reason that it's so easy to get out of order is because children don't always say thank you. Your husband doesn't always praise you for making a meal or having the laundry done or making the bed. And so it's kind of a thankless job. And so it's a struggle. You know, we live in a fallen world full of sin. We are going to have struggles. We think in terms of wars and famine and poverty. But girls, we have an individual relationship with Jesus. And so even within the context of a relationship, we struggle sometimes to keep those things in priority. So are we saying no to our children and our husbands so we can do for others? or are we saying yes to God, and so then we keep those priorities in order? We have to take a break, but we'll be back. We're going to continue because you're being really quiet, and I saw those eyes flashing, so I want to know where you are on that as young women mid-marriage, early in mid-marriage. We'll be right back.
I think that the order of things, well, it's God and then others, and I think there's sub-levels of others, others being your husband, your kids, and then the church or your neighbors or whomever.
Hey guys, I just want to tell you today about a little book. It's inexpensive, it's simple to read. You can read it in about 45 minutes, taking your time. It's a book God gave me about 6 years ago that talks about the struggle we go through between being on the branch as a budding acorn and Father Tree saying, it's going to be amazing, wait till you see what I do. And then you come to in the dirt on the ground. And there is a vision that's given you and I for life, a dream from God, and we hold it in our heart, but there are times to get to that dream, that vision has to die. The book is called Acorn Dropped, and it's about that season when you are in the dirt on the ground. It was written when I was in the dirt and on the ground. And my family and I held on and believed for God's best. If you've been discouraged, if you've been through a tough time, I promise you this book will help you.
Welcome back to Hot Flash. We are covering a topic today that all of us have struggled with sometimes. Is our service to God to please Him and then to do what He wants, or is our service to God done because it makes us feel good and gets us attention? We can't substitute. Well, I know this, girls. If I am not following the order of God, husband, children, and then others, it's easy for me to identify when I'm out of order because usually I'm very snappy with everybody else because they're interfering in my service to God. And I don't like it when my daughter will say, well, how come you have to be with that person instead of me? Well, I want to scream, stop being so selfish. And there is a time in families that have to be taught that we serve others. But as a wife, we're the managers of our household. And so what does that mean? Does it mean we run it like an army ship? I think we run it's to be a haven. They're going to face pressures outside. Your husband's going to face pressure at work. Your kids are going to face pressure at school. And our home is to be a place where they can come home and not be bombarded with that kind of pressure or judgment or upsets that kids and husbands deal with. And that's our job as a Proverbs 31 wife, where we manage the household. We're to be His helpmeet. But yet, have you ever felt like, well, who helps me? And who makes my world not? I mean, my house is calm until they come home. Is that how you feel sometimes? And what do we do with that?
Well, I think, is there a difference between the principle and the actual, let's say, divvying up of the responsibilities? Because, families nowadays, it's not like how it was in Bible days where, you have a family unit and,
And everything comes from the house. Right?
That's right. The servant, if she's managing servants, she's managing, it's like she's a CEO.
Well, I was going to say, we think Bible women stayed home and didn't do anything, but Proverbs 31 was a businesswoman, right. Was a financial person. I think, like, one of the girls I was reading about was the Ortland. I read books years ago by the Ortlands, and I think their daughter or daughter-in-law is in ministry now. And she said, a well-managed home does not mean the home is perfect. It means that the people within the home know they are more important than perfection. So what it is it gives you, they know that they are valued, that they're acknowledged, and there is a safe haven of acceptance there and of support. Now, that doesn't mean you excuse your children from the consequences of their own behavior, or that you won't ever get mad at your husband and disagree with him on something. But you have to remember that, if we seek first God's kingdom. So what do we seek in God's? What do we seek first? We seek His salvation, which is the most important thing and gives us a place to start. And then what do we seek? We seek His will in our life. Anything else? And then we seek what can we do to do back for Him who did so much for us. And then we seek the right order of that. If we do that in the order that he has established, and how will we know the right order? How do we know the right order?
Well, Jesus said to love him first and then to love others as you love yourself. So I think that the order of things, it's God and then others. And I think there's sub-levels of others, others being your husband, your kids, and then the church or your neighbors or whomever.
Well, I even think this. I think you love your husband, you love God, you love your husband, you love your children. And then, you're not to obey your parents once you grow up and make your own home, but you're to honor them. There's no place that says you are not to honor them. So I think you consider your parents if they're alive, and extended family after that, and then service to others. But, sometimes it's easier to serve strangers than it is your family. Again, I think it's because we get pats on the back and feel better about it. It's just easier.
But then here's the question. Okay, Jesus called the 12 disciples. Surely some of them were married. We know Peter was married. So what about that? What did the wives, did they come? Did they stay home?
Well, I don't think your ministry ever, again, I think it's what you and your husband agree on. Think about, we know women in ministry who travel. One in particular, years ago, felt called to a ministry. Her husband was nowhere near recognizing that meant she wouldn't be in business with him, which she was. She wouldn't be at home doing what he wanted. She was going to step into a position. And, I remember her coming to Ron and me, and we said, look, God's called you to this. But first and foremost, God's called you because you're married to be your husband's helpmeet. And he is not ready to see this yet. He isn't interested in this yet. And so if you honor God and seek his will first, he will bring all these things to you. And it was amazing to watch over the next couple of years how they became a team in ministry. I remember hearing Kay Arthur one time. Kay Arthur's a big name. She's been around for years. She's really a strong woman. And her husband is, in public, quiet, staid, kind of sits back and watches. But if you knew Kay, you would know that Kay has done nothing without him giving her his blessing, his support, and they have set within their own family what boundaries, like maybe she didn't travel as much when the kids were little, or maybe she traveled more when the kids were older, and maybe he gave her the freedom to do that and handled some things, but when she can't, lots of people in ministry have to negotiate those boundaries and that schedule. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So, I think, like Kim, I think of you. You weren't married till you were almost 30. Then you had children, and when they were very little, it kept you from being involved in things that I had always known you to be involved in church. But you and Matt had to work out when that time came for you to be able to step back into some other ministries of church. Now, did you miss those while those years you didn't? Yeah, you did miss them. You did. But she had to say, okay, what's going to keep peace in my home? What does my husband want? What is my obligation and my desire to please God and him? And this time with children will be short, and it is. When you're going through it, it seems like 18 years is lasting 100. But really, your kids grow up faster than you think. And so we keep going back to seasons. There's always seasons. And I think the thing is, if you seek God first during all those times in your life, he makes it's not easy, girls, but he makes it clear to you. And the hard part is we continually relinquish our own will for his. That's our relationship with him. We continually have to relinquish what we want for what he wants. We'll be back in just a minute. Don't go away. I hope we haven't frustrated you too much, but we'll be back to continue, and maybe we can get some peace at the end of this.
All the Quick Study television programs in their full length are uploaded on YouTube 1 week before they air. Watch Quick Study on YouTube, and you can embed Quick Study in your website from the YouTube links.
back to Hop Flash. Today we've been trying to talk about when and why we say no. We haven't really gotten much past being a married person who has to keep God, her husband, her family, and then others. Because I think today we all want to, on this panel, we all want to say, but we don't want to give up service to others. I don't think that you do give up service to others. I think in Proverbs 31, what ultimately comes to light as you study that passage and other things about God's will in our life is that it defines her character and her attitude far more than it really specifies the actual, activities of her life. So what you said in the very beginning, Tony, it boils down to our mindset. Our mindset is to seek God and please Him.
Right, and I think I've been, dealing with this now coming into motherhood and being somebody who has been very involved in the past and in church and in service and different things and just figuring out, where is God taking me next? I've had to learn that just because God decided that it was time for us to have a family didn't mean that He wasn't going to continue what He was doing in me before that. And so it wasn't that He was just going to stop that. This was something I had to learn. This is something that He brought to our lives so that we could expand our love. We could grow more. We could build our character.
Well, that's interesting you said that because, you were very involved and you didn't marry until you were a little, in your late 20s. And so okay. And, when you've had years out of mom and dad's house and as a woman on your own, either in a career or in lots of service in the church, and then you fall in love and that's great. You're so happy and excited. And you get married, and then you realize, well, wait, now I have to consider him, and I don't get to do all those other things that were fun for me, fulfilled me, that I wanted to do, that I liked to do, that people saw strength in me. And you think, well, how could that wonderful thing where God brought you your husband, your covering, your provider, your protector, and girls, you're his helpmeet. And I used to say to Ron, I'm your helpmeet because you needed help. God gave men helpers because they needed help in their life, so we are not under them. We're not less than them. We completed them. Okay. And when I say we're the helpers, which means, girls, we have to be the ones that adjust and help our home run. I can already read, because I've said this to other young women, and they're like, I don't want to have to be the one that gives in. I don't want to have to be the one that helps. But girls, it doesn't mean that you give in and are abused or misused or overused or used up. That isn't what it means. It means you have this attitude of, God, you gave me this provider, protector. He is going to love me like Christ loved the church. I'm going to pray for him every day that he loves me like Christ loves the church. Because, Lord, it isn't hard for me to say yes to you at all because you have my good first. That's what you want, is my good for a future with hope and fulfillment. And so I'm going to submit to you. And because I submit to you, and this is the order of things, I'm going to submit to this guy. I'm going to be here to help him. I'm going to try to make his home peaceful and a respite and a place where he can come home at night and feel relaxed and encouraged and loved and appreciated for being out there working. Now, if your husbands happen to be listening and they're thinking, yes, that's right, you adjust to me, then, I'll tell you to watch a man's show who says, but you have to love her like Christ loved the church. That's the first thing. So if, there are women who don't have husbands that love them like Christ loved the church, I would never say stay there and let him beat you, use you, misuse you. But I would say you submit to that principle that, Lord, I'm doing this unto you. Like, don't you have a chore at home that you really resent having to do after at least 6 months of doing it, or 12 months, or a year, or 20 years of asking for the same thing?
It's the kids are finally old enough to have.
Okay, I'm still resenting after many years of raising kids. But you know what? Every time I find myself resenting it, I have to go back and say, who am I doing this unto? Everything I do unto Jesus. Well, if I'm doing it unto Jesus, then cleaning up after a couple of my kids, I get angry at them. I'm so frustrated that they don't get it yet. I don't know if they'll ever get it. But if I do it unto him, then I say, Lord, let me have the right attitude. And if I'm serving him, then my attitude turns around again. It's a mindset, and it's a battle, always. And we're not going to get perfect at it till he comes and we go home and we're perfect.
It's a battle, and I don't want to blame the culture, but it is a cultural thing. Here where we live in the United States, it's so easy for, many of us in my generation, Kim's generation, even yours, that have grown up in that women can be just like men. They train us women to go and look for jobs, and sure, you can do a job, you can have kids, you can have everything you want. And so when it comes to that point, you can, but you
can't. Can you do it all well?
But you can't do it all well. No.
You know what? We've really limited ourselves to marriage. I want to talk about when we know it's okay to say no to things outside of marriage, even good things, things of service, things in the church. When do we know to say no to that? I think we're taking a break. I'm looking at the director. We're taking a break, and we'll be back to wrap this up today. Thanks for being here.
Remember, Quick Study Television is available on iPhones and all Android portable devices. For more information, go to BibleDiscoveryTV.com and click on Mobile TV Device.
Welcome back to Hot Flash. And we've decided you're really watching part 1 of this discussion. We're going to continue this next week because every woman that is watching and all of us have been frustrated with when we have to say yes to our family, no to our family, yes to things that we want to do, no to things that we want to do. When it's okay to say no, even when someone's asking you to do a good thing, when is that appropriate? We didn't even talk about some of you that aren't married yet, or some of you, like I'm widowed, so I'm not married now. Does that give me freedom to go do whatever I want? Well, I'm still raising kids. So there's so many combinations of women, and it does come down to a mindset. But we want to continue this conversation next week on Hot Flash, and we hope you'll join us. Girls, are you having any wrap-ups? One thing Tony said before we wrap up, you said that no one taught you this before you were married, and no one taught you before you had a baby.
And I don't know if it's something that someone can sit down and tell you until you actually experience it.
Well, there is a verse in Titus that talks about the older women to train the younger women to love their husband and children.
I think that's a call out to me.
I don't know.
I'm the older woman here. And you know what? This show was hard for me to prepare for because I have been the young, frustrated person, not married, and then a wife, and then I've had all of those that brought me to go, girls, it is what it is, which sounds so negative and so like you better accept it. That isn't how I feel at all. It's that I've lived through those frustrations, having to continually go back to seeking God first. And every time, that is where the peace is found. So join us next week on Hot Flash as we continue when and where and why it's okay for you to say no, and how to learn and identify those situations in which you should say no. Join us. We'll be here. We hope you're here too. If you have any comments or questions that you want us to address, please send an email to hotflash@thestreamtv.com, and that would be great for us to have some of your questions or comments to bring into the table next week. See you then.